Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, if you follow global tech, today we are unpacking a massive, just absolutely fascinating puzzle. We're looking at the Indian telecom market. And honestly, this landscape is essentially a giant matryoshka doll. You open one layer of opportunity, and inside is chaos, and inside that is a game of high-stakes geopolitical chess. For a company like Starlink, cracking this market, it's nothing short of the ultimate prize. But getting there means navigating one of the most complex corporate and bureaucratic environments on Earth. We're going to look at the staggering numbers, the fierce rivalries, and the global stakes that make this such a thrilling story to follow. To really grasp what SpaceX and Starlink are up against here, you first have to understand the sheer, absolute chaos of the environment itself. Larry Goldberg, he's a serial entrepreneur who's managed large teams in India, recently shared this visceral story about a terrifying drive he took from Trivandrum to Kochi. The roads were incredibly narrow, and while coming around this tight, totally blind bend, his driver decides to pass a three-wheeler. Now that three-wheeler was simultaneously passing a cyclist, and suddenly, hurtling straight toward them on this tiny road is a massive bus passing a truck. So you have 4 vehicles wide on a 2-lane blind curve. Larry literally closed his eyes, convinced a catastrophic collision was inevitable. But miraculously, by some unwritten rule of the road, they all slipped past each other safely.
No way, right?
Okay, let's dive into this. Because that harrowing car ride, it perfectly captures the exact situation Starlink finds itself in right now. Just like the intense defensive driving required on Indian roads, Starlink has to navigate a chaotic landscape filled with constant corporate honking, completely relative rules, and bureaucratic blind corners. It is a crowded, high-speed environment where making a single wrong move could be disastrous. But the reward for getting through it, monumental.
To make sense of all this, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The scale of the Indian market. 2. Its history of rapid growth. 3. The rural connectivity gap. 4. Telecom rivals and roadblocks. And 5. The geopolitics and final approvals.
All right, Section 1, Scale of the Indian Market.
First, we just have to grasp the sheer scale we're talking about here. Starlink currently has roughly 10 million subscribers worldwide. Entering India, that could instantly multiply their base. To put their consumer appetite into perspective, check out that 25.7 gigabytes. That is the average monthly data usage per subscriber in India. Driven by negligible call costs and an explosive mobile-first culture, Indians are consuming data at a blistering pace. I mean, media, education, entertainment, the whole shebang, it all happens on the phone. But here is the comparison that truly frames the scale of what Starlink is looking at. Think about the entire United States. That's roughly 310 million mobile users. Now in India, in just the rural areas alone, there are over 250 million active users who are completely isolated on outdated 2G networks. Just to be clear, there are 4 times as many total mobile phones in India as there are in the US. The total addressable market sitting in these rural blind spots is practically the size of America.
Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds, looking at a history of rapid growth.
You know, India didn't become a mobile-first powerhouse overnight. Actually, back in the 1990s, getting a simple landline involved multi-year wait times, heavy bureaucracy, and, frankly, rampant corruption. You literally had to bribe the guy who knew the guy just to get a phone installed. But then things shifted, and I mean dramatically. The real turning point was in 2016, when Reliance Jio revolutionized the space by offering completely free 4G plans. They took a massive hit on their balance sheets but captured the market basically overnight, turning India into a mobile-first nation. And now, the government has an incredibly ambitious, though definitely difficult, target to achieve 100% rural 4G coverage by 2026.
Which brings us right to Section 3, the Rural Connectivity Gap.
And this brilliantly illustrates the geographic deficit that 2026 target exposes. Notice the massive divide here. Urban areas boast a telecom density of 150%, meaning lots of people have multiple devices and SIM cards. Meanwhile, rural density lags far behind at just 60%. In mountainous regions or dense forests, laying traditional fiber is physically impossible. This gap makes Starlink's direct-to-cell V3 terminal technology the absolute perfect solution. They don't need to dig trenches through mountains, they just need a clear view of the sky.
And we're already seeing the first moves to bridge this gap. The northeastern state of Meghalaya is a prime example. It's a mountainous, extremely difficult terrain of high strategic importance near international borders. Meghalaya has actually already entered into an exploratory direct contract with Starlink to provide connectivity. They are literally just sitting there waiting on the final green light from the federal government to flip the switch.
Moving on to Section 4, Telecom Rivals and Roadblocks.
But flipping that switch? Yeah, it's not easy. On this corporate battlefield, domestic giants aren't just going to hand over millions of users. Here's the current landscape. You've got Reliance Jio dominating with over 500 million users, and Bharti Airtel as a very strong number 2. Then there's Vodafone Idea, which owes roughly $9.6 billion in government dues. That massive debt led the government to take a 49% stake. There are even rumors, wild but out there, that Starlink could buy that stake for an instant footprint. Finally, you have the state-owned BSNL, which primarily focuses on those hard-to-reach rural areas.
How these giants interact with Starlink is a total masterclass in corporate survival. Both Reliance Jio and Bharti Airtel are heavily engaging in what we can call classic Indian corporate hedging. So on one hand, they are fiercely lobbying the federal government to block Starlink or at least deny them special treatment. But on the other hand, they are actively signing strategic distribution deals with Starlink. It's wild. They want to crush the competition for sure, but if the competition wins, they want to be the ones selling it.
Finally, Section 5, Geopolitics and Final Approvals. Beyond the corporate rivalries, the ultimate decision-makers here are the deep state bureaucrats. Starlink has a few final, massive hurdles to clear: foreign direct investment clearance, national security requirements, and federal spectrum allocation. And it's really important to note that in India, spectrum isn't just bought outright. It is treated as a highly protected national asset that the government leases out.
So the crucial point is, the Indian government is essentially hitting the pause button on that FDI clearance. Because SpaceX is backed by a myriad of opaque venture funds and special purpose vehicles, regulators are demanding to know exactly who owns them. There's strong speculation right now that this FDI hurdle will only be completely cleared once SpaceX goes public with an IPO, making its ownership structure entirely transparent to Indian regulators.
And the reason they demand this transparency? It all boils down to a very intense geopolitical threat matrix. India shares highly militarized borders with China and Pakistan. They are incredibly protective of data security and communication infrastructure to prevent any adversarial influence. Adding to this unique dynamic, India is the only country in the world that hosts the Tibetan government in exile, headquartered right in Dharamshala, naturally placing India and China at deep strategic odds.
But this is exactly where Starlink's entry aligns with much larger global movements. India is a central pillar of the Quad Alliance, a strategic partnership with the United States, Japan, and Australia. We've seen recent phone calls between Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi, and the integration of defense-focused programs like SpaceX's Starshield. The West and India are strategically aligning in the Indian Ocean region to secure supply chains and balance out regional powers.
Which leaves us with this final massive question to chew on. Starlink's entry into India isn't just about bringing internet to 250 million rural users, as incredible as that is. It requires navigating chaotic corporate battlefields, appeasing deep state security apparatuses, and leaning into shifting global alliances. So if they succeed, we really have to ask, will Starlink simply be a telecom provider? Or will it be the primary catalyst that fundamentally reshapes the geoeconomic balance of power in the East?